and then he tops out at Thunderwell Helter. And he's got 4 Falcon Raptor and 3 Hell Riders.
Well, you wanted it, you got it, because we have Bant Hexblade on the right.
All right, here we go.
I've got Nathan Quintani playing, taking a look really, really quickly here. The only real difference from his deck list as opposed to John Stearns, it looks like, is that he's actually starting Selesnya Charm, which I'm not positive if John was doing it or not. I don't think that Josh or Leighton was starting Selesnya Charm. It was a card that originally started out in the deck and people cut for other things like Fencing Ace. But other than that, you've got your standard base here of Pilgrim, Invisible Stalker, Silverblade Paladin, Geist, enchant creatures, increasing savagery, in the beatdown. So we're underway. Nathan has 2 Hinterland Harbors. Lee has a Mountain. He does not have a 1-drop, and we're getting something sorted out here very quickly, but probably won't take very long time. Who do you think the favorite is?
I think Hexproof still has the advantage because after board they can gain a lot of life off of Pilgrim because the red deck doesn't have that many instant speed answers, so he can set it up so, you know, if he just has a bunch of enchantments on one of his guys and just plays a Pilgrim and attacks that turn, even though he might be able to Pillar of Flames the Pilgrim next on his main phase, that life swing might be enough to really push the race in his favor. So I think Hexproof still probably has the advantage here.
As we do see an Invisible Stalker here from Nathan. Lee last turn played Nash Out and got in for 2, which is why Nathan is at 18, and we'll see if he can keep the aggression up here or if he does have a black source of mana, which he does now in a swamp. And you see a Hellhole Flare in his hand as well, so we're going to start this turn off by coming across with the Ash Zealot.
Yeah, in game 1, I don't think Nathan really has much to race with. He really needs to get turn 3 Geist, turn 4 Savagery, I think, to have a chance with these potential aggressive starts like this one. So I think game 1, Lee probably has the advantage, but after board, I think Pilgrim certainly helps push things back in Nathan's favor.
That Pilgrim you speak of is the Near Heath Pilgrim, a card that Nathan is almost certain to sideboard in. It is the 2/1 Soulbound Lifelinker.
Yeah.
Doesn't see a ton of play, but actually pretty potent in this Bant Hexblade deck.
But again, I said I thought that people would play red because it must have a good matchup against Hexblade. So, and right now it looks like Lee's in the driver's seat. Do we have a Savagery here?
That's exactly what we have. An increasing Savagery here for you guys. We'll put that one on the screen as well. It's going to put 5+1/+1 tokens, as you see Lee taking a look at it. And it can be flashback. It's pretty rare that does happen.
Yeah, but. And that's just not... he's basically going to have to hold it back as a blocker. But if Lee has an Aristocrat, it's going to be pretty bad for Nathan.
Yeah, it's not a good feeling to have to leave that Stalker back and not be able to get in and try to race because he is behind.
Yeah.
Even though he was on the play this game, Nathan was still too far behind on the board to be able to keep giving the beatdowns. And if there is an Aristocrat here, he is in some serious trouble.
Invisible Stalker does make a good blocker though with 5+1/+1 counters.
That is definitely true. No Zealous Conscripts, no Mark Mutinies, none of that nonsense.
If Nathan can get a white source, he might be able to make something out of this, but I don't know. We're going to see some 1-drops from Lee now, I think.
We have a Vexing Devil. Quick, what do you do?
I think you got to let it resolve.
Not going to take 4?
I don't think so. There you go. Take 4.
Yep, you were wrong.
Drop it at 12.
That's right, you were wrong. It ain't any fun until someone loses an eye. Just in case you didn't know. That's what old Vexy thinks. I think that it feels like it's kind of close between taking 4 and not. I mean, you have the reach on the board from Hellhole Flare. Maybe you're supposed to just let the 4/3 be there because Stalker's just doing such a good job of blocking. But then 4 is attacking the next turn. So it seems like it's kind of close.
I guess if Nathan has no other creatures to commit to the board. But my concern would be if he had a Brimstone Volley, which again, Nathan's not sure what kind of build Lee is playing. But Brimstone Volley with the Flailer already in play, you could easily be dead. He could just get you into the range of burning you out now.
We are going to have an Avacyn's Pilgrim here as well after we saw that Spectral Flight.
Is he ready to attack you?
That's the tough part. I mean, it would have been an attack for 8. It is a 3-turn clock right now. You know, he can attack for 8.
I think it's safe to say he doesn't have a Hell Rider right now, which might be one of the main things Nathan's afraid of.
And so what we see there is a Searing Spear knocking Nathan down to 9. He's going to draw a card. Plays Cavern of Souls. We'll get confirmation on what that is naming for you guys in just a moment, but we might finally see an attack here from Lee.
Yeah, and Lee doesn't actually have Brimstone Volley in his deck. He has Searing Spear and Pillar Flame as his only burn. So, obviously Brimstone Volley is not an out for him, but, you know, Nathan doesn't know that. And had Lee had a Brimstone Volley, then he might have been able to just kill him that turn.
And now you have a Thundermaw Hellkite. And this is a huge deal now, too, because with the trigger, it's going to tap the Invisible Stalker, and he's able to get in with all of these creatures here. And Invisible Stalker, who was playing defense so incredibly well, can't do that now because of that Spectral Flight. And
I don't believe Pilgrim is active, so I don't think he can cast the Selesnya Charm.
Yep. Was just played last turn. Selesnya Charm not an option right now. He does have to block because he is facing lethal. And he hasn't played a white land yet this game, so it doesn't look like he'll be able to Selesnya Charm unless he draws one.
So he can block, drop to 2. He can deal with the Thundermaw if he draws a white source, but the Flailer can still just kill him once Lee untaps. So looks like this game's over.
Yeah, taking a look at his outs in the situation for Nathan, there's no way for him to gain life right now, so unless there's some sort of large Ethereal Armor turn that's going to take place again with no white mana, I don't find that to be likely. It looks like Thundermaw Hellkite is actually going to steal this game because he played a Spectral Flight when it's kind of arguable if he had to or not. You know, it's nice to make that thing big, but there's definitely, you know, a drawback, which we just saw from Thundermaw Hellkite.
Yeah, I'm not sure it was necessary, especially if you're not going to attack. You already know your guy's bigger than any of the creatures there. Maybe he was thinking about the Aristocrat and maybe wanting to block for that, but, you know, you basically got to pick your poison. You got to figure he doesn't have the Aristocrat the turn before, but he ended up drawing one anyway. So I think Nathan was sort of in a tough spot regardless. I think, and Lee does have more Aristocrats in his decks than Hellkite, so I think I could at least understand Nathan's play there, you know.
Sure. You know, he's also just trying to, you know, make his guy big enough so that he can maybe make it so that he attacks twice. Cut it from 3 turns into 2. You know, he plays Spectral Flight, plays a Chump Blocker, next turn maybe puts a Rank on his guy, attacks for 10, and then hopes he can live and then get him in the next turn. But instead, Thundermaw Hellkites, you know, it's coming to playability that doesn't normally do too much. Did a lot that game.
Yeah. And that game was a perfect example of how if Nathan was able to get one hit in with the Pilgrim Soul Bonded, then suddenly the life swing is enough maybe to give Nathan the advantage in the race. But, you know, game 1, there's not much he can do if Lee gets his haste creatures in play and just is able to regain the turn.
Yeah, and that game is just wildly different if there is a Pilgrim. And we are going to see 3 copies of Nearhearth Pilgrim come in from the sideboard for Nathan. He also has 2 copies of Nevermore. I can't imagine those coming in. 2 copies of Feeling of Dread, and when you are racing, as you are typically are in this matchup, Feeling of Dread, fantastic. 2 copies of Wolfare Avenger, a card that can actually take Lee off guard if he doesn't know that it's coming. A copy of Rootbound Defenses, 1 copy of Garruk Relentless, 3 Rest in Peace, and 1 Negate. So I think you can expect 3 Pilgrims. You can probably expect the 2 Feeling of Dreads, maybe the 2 Avengers, maybe a Negate, maybe a Garruk Relentless coming on in.
Yeah, and in Proto Barcelona, when Bant Hexproof was a deck there, the red-white champion deck was actually a tough matchup, game 1. But after board, Bant brought in the Wall of Redemption, which changed everything because, you know, not only did you have Silverheart to pump it, but you also had increasing savagery. So suddenly you can gain enough life where the aggro deck really couldn't do anything. Nathan doesn't have that in his sideboard, as he's basically all in on the Pilgrims, which again still can be good, but it really comes down to who can get the most tempo. And Lee just has a lot of haste creatures, so since this match is all about tempo, I think Lee has the slight edge, but it's going to come down to whether or not Nathan can get his Pilgrims in for one big hit with a Pilgrim or a Geist, and with Invisible Stalker.
Luckily for Nathan, Lee only has those 4 instant speed removal spells and 4 pillar, or excuse me, and 4 Searing Spears. So, you know, he'll have to pick his spots correctly, but he'll only have to worry about 4 Searing Spears, assuming he doesn't have more help in his sideboard.
Yep.
So, I mean, that game definitely leaning. I mean, it's kind of interesting because Nathan was on the play that game. I think play versus draw is like a big deal in this matchup.
Yeah, like if Lee doesn't have the Ash Zealot there, if he has a Knight of Infamy instead, that extra 2 points might have mattered a lot more. I think the fact that he was able to attack first and the Invisible Stalker didn't have a pump spell on turn 3, it just really changed the entire shape of the game. I assume that Bant might have the advantage in this matchup just because Lee's deck isn't a traditional aggressive deck. He only has like 8 1-drops. He doesn't have the Stone Rights that are typically in this deck. He doesn't have Stormkirk Noble, which are cards that I would expect a mono-red deck to really beat up on a hexproof deck. You know, they can get a lot of creatures into play on turns 1 to 3, so that once they get a Hellrider into play, there's not much the hexproof deck can do.
Sure.
They're going to win the race most of the time. Lee's deck is a lot more top-heavy. He only has 3 3-drops. He has 8 1-drops, 8 2-drops. 4 of those 1-drops, though, are Vexing Devils, which, you know, could easily just not enter play. So I expected Nathan to have a slightly better matchup against this version of Red than a typical version that includes Stone Rights and Stormkirk Nobles and the like.
And I mean, you bring up how that Ash Zealot, those 2 points of haste damage were pretty relevant. That's part of the reason that you saw Ari Lax play Lightning Baller at Grand Prix Atlantic City, just because it is nice to have a 3-2 and Gorash Chainwalker, but I think the haste is the thing that makes all the difference.
Yeah, and Lee's not bringing in much. I mean, he might be bringing in Nighthawk's Appetite of Brains. I don't think he'd bring in the Appetite just for the increasing savagery. But yeah, there's really not much in his sideboard. He has Appetite, Dreadboard, Rakdos Charm, Rakdos Return, Slaughter Games, Nighthawk, Conscripts. Maybe he brings in Nighthawk for Pillar Flame.
Pillar not having a lot of good targets here.
Yeah, but maybe he might want to just kill a Pilgrim just to kind of, as we saw in the last game, he could have color screwed Nathan if he was able to kill the Pilgrim there. So we'll see how it works out. It worked out last game for Lee.
As we do see a turn 1 Vexing Devil from Lee already put into the graveyard. Nathan's life total is going to go down to 16. And you're going to see an abundant growth here. Used to fix the mana and draw a card. As you see, Lee is going to take a look. We can bring it up on the screen for you guys. It's a strange card, but it actually works out pretty well in this particular deck, mostly because of Ethereal Armor.
Yeah, and I think the fact that it helps the color situation is important because the deck, as we saw last game, it has issues with its mana. So just being able to fix it is huge.
You are going to see another Vexing Devil here.
You know, dropping Nathan down to 12, which is exactly what Lee wants to do. I mean, he wants to drop him as... Those Vexing Devils did what they needed to do. And now Lee can just wait to draw his 4 drops and get in there and finish Nathan off. It's like 3 hits with an Aristocrat, he's dead. So things looking rough for Nathan, especially now if he's taking 2.
Yeah, and he is taking 2.
He's going to have to... This Geist is going to have to get big very quickly because if Lee plays an Ash Zealot this turn, suddenly, you know, Nathan could be dead by turn 5.
We do see a Geist of St. Traff here from Nathan. Nathan already at 10 life, looking to turn the tide very quickly, and he's going to need to. As we see Lee considering his options here, and he's going to go with...
Is that Nighthawk? No,
nope,
actually
Ash
plays
Zealot.
the Ash Zealot.
Okay. So is he going to keep the aggression up, or is he going to slow down?
I think he can't slow down. He has to attack it.
And that's what we're going to see. Ash Zealot is going to come across. It's going to knock Nathan down to 8, and I 100% agree with you. There's no reason to stop attacking. Yeah. There are too many different cards that Nathan can play on his turn to make it so that you can't block. And missing that 2 points of damage is a big deal as we see Pillar post-combat. So Nathan's down to 6.
You're going to hope for a Pilgrim here.
Let's see what he has. See an Ethereal Armor in his hand. See a Sun Petal Grove. Can't make out the rest all that well, as the Sun Petal Grove does come into play. The race is certainly on here, as we do see an Ethereal Armor. It's going to give +2/+0 because there is an abundant growth in the +2/+2 because there's an abundant growth in the graveyard, as he is taking a look at it to confirm what it does.
He has another abundant growth, so he can make it slightly larger, but again, this isn't going to win the race. He really needs a Pilgrim here. I think his option is either casting a Pilgrim, I'm sorry, Avacyn Pilgrim, not a Nighthawk Pilgrim.
Sure.
Casting an Avacyn Pilgrim and a Spectral Flight, or playing a Abundant Growth to hope to draw a Pilgrim, which means that he can only cast the Avacyn Pilgrim or the Spectral Flight after that. I think he has to try to dig here.
We are still running winner boxes in the format of your choice. We also will be starting Sonics with the Legacy.
See Avacyn's Pilgrim there in his hand. Scary situation here. I mean, when you're playing against the red deck, you're at 6 life. You already see Asheld representing, you know, that 2 more points damage puts you to 4. The red deck doesn't have a ton of reach, as we are going to see Nathan come across with the Geist and the Angel token. This is going to be an attack here for 8. This is going to be an Avacyn's Pilgrim.
And I guess he doesn't have anything else. Maybe he has a Celestia Charm in his hand.
There's an Abundant Growth. There's another Pilgrim there.
Yeah, I'm not sure why he wouldn't have cast it. Okay,
Okay,
so
Invisible
Stalker,
Stalker. Okay.
Speaking of Commander, if you signed up for Commander Pod 6, come on
See,
to the
Lee
stage.
takes a draw
We're
step.
ready to start. Once again, players in Commander Pod 6.
Pillar Flame in his
come
hand
on
here.
To the stage.
So this game's still within Nathan's reach. Needs a pretty good draw. He'll get 2 draws with the Abundant Growth in his draw step. I think you want to block here.
Yep. You see
Nighthawk.
That's a big draw.
Yep.
Vampire Nighthawk coming into play. Huge draw there from Lee.
No, I think Lee actually had it last turn. He wasn't sure whether or not to cast it. I could tell that's what he was thinking about, whether or not he wanted to cast it last turn or play the Ash Zealot. I was glad that he went with the Ash Zealot, because if Nathan has an Ethereal Armor, then it won't really matter that much.
Sure.
But still, you know, Nathan really wants to draw a Nighthawk Pilgrim here.
As we're going to see an Abundant Growth here. Going to draw Nathan a new card. Going to pump up the Geist of St. Traff 1 more because of the Ethereal Armor. And while the Nighthawk's not going to be able to kill the Geist of St. Traff, it being able to block the Angel token right now is a pretty big deal.
And gain him 2 life as well.
Pretty quickly, come on back to the stage.
So we are going to see the attack here. You're going to see the Angel trigger occur. Invisible Stalker is going to stay back on defense. And you see
So I
Lee's
think
going to do some math here.
He can still block the Geist, and he'll only drop to 10.
Yeah, he'll go up to 14, down to 10. Actually, well, the Geist has first strike. Geist St. Traff has first strike because of the armor.
Ah, that's correct, yeah.
So that'll actually
So
change
he has
some
to
things.
block the Angel.
So he's electing not to block at all. That's what it looks like.
And hoping that the damage just gets there.
So he's going to take 9. He's going to go to 3. I mean, everyone knows at this point that Ban Hexproof doesn't have any reach. But that is certainly a risk.
Yeah, my only issue with that play is that I know you're trying to kill him, but unless you have a Brimstone Volley or something, I don't know what kind of. If you draw an Aristocrat, you're winning. Your opponent's at 6, right?
Blood Crypt down to 1.
So
Doing the math.
he needs the Aristocrat.
I think it has to be Aristocrat, right?
Yep.
And there it is. Falcon
That should
Wrath
be enough.
Aristocrat. We're gonna see 6 damage in the air.
Yeah, he just has obviously the one is it.
I think Lee needed that 4th land, and he peeled it right off. It was a Blood Crypt. You see Nathan kind of smiling. Lee pretty anxious. Is this gonna do it? I know that look all too well. Looking at that last card again, seeing that it doesn't do anything, and that's it.
That's it.
Lee wins, and he's pretty happy about it. Pretty stoked.
Yeah.
2-0 over Ban Hexproof.
I mean, if he had drawn that 4th land earlier, it would have been this close. But yeah, just, the 2 Vexing Devils early. You know.
I mean, that card's so tough, right? Like, Are you just supposed to let him resolve? Are you just supposed to let him resolve and sit into play as 4/3s? Because those are just bigger problems down the road. Then.
I don't know if you. Yeah, I think you gotta just. I guess you have. You definitely pay 4 for the first one.
Sure.
The second one though, I guess. Yeah, I mean Nathan just wasn't set up. His draw was pretty terrible, so he would have been he could have gone turn 3 Geist, and then Lee would have been able to attack with the Vexing Devil anyway. So. Yeah, there's not much Nathan can do there. He has to take the 8. It was just unfortunate that Lee drew 2 Vexing Devils because it basically chipped away at 40% of his life total. And any aristocrat at any point is pretty much going to lock up the game because Nathan doesn't have good answers to it.
And the weird thing here is, you look at Vexing Devil, a card that isn't often seen in mono red decks, especially in this format. As you said, you normally see Stromcard Noble, you normally see Stone Right, you normally see Rakdos Cackler.